Hey there, Popper people. It is me, Jason. Welcome to my channel, The Lanky Lefty 27. I was going to do a different video today. I'm actually very sick, so I'm not really feeling it. But I did want to share some scary ghost stories that I've experienced while working in sleep labs. Look, if you're a polysomnographic technologist, if you work during the night, you likely have some ghost stories as well. Or we'll call them unexplained stories. Things that happen, things that go bump in the night that you can't really make sense of. I've never really told stories of the unexplained on this channel, so I'm going to start off with one that's actually not my own. It's from a coworker when we started talking about this kind of thing. This story is actually really terrible, so I'm going to start off with it, and it's going to it's going to need some help in being scary. So I brought my flashlight. Goes like this. Now this story is from my coworker Pat. She was working in a sleep lab. It was converted from an old Victorian house in Grass Valley, California. So Pat walked out of the tech area into a long hallway to use a restroom. And as she looked down the corridor, she saw floating away from her, and I say floating because she had nothing from the knees down. It was just knees up. Floating away, she looked back in period clothing and just gave her just a small smile, and then continued down and then disappeared. Whoops, I'm sorry. I was supposed to make that scary. Just pretend like I was doing this while I was telling the story. Makes it scarier. She said the smile was very pleasant and she wasn't scared at all. My question was, I don't know what period clothing means, because, like, what period? Was it like the Renaissance? What period? Now, I understand period is supposed to be in Victorian, but that always just kind of annoys me. All right, hopefully that was a good warm-up. Not very scary. What do you guys think of that story? Was it absolutely terrible like I told you it would be? Here's two more stories that were experienced by me. So I first started off in Salt Lake City when I first started doing sleep disorders. I started off at LDS Hospital just doing training during the day, and then they transferred me down to, it was like a little house outside of Cottonwood Hospital in Murray, Utah, which is a suburb of Salt Lake City. This is actually where I found my cat, Mr. Squirrel. Mr. Squirrel has passed away in January of this year, but that's where I found him. So near and dear to my heart. But this was an old house. It was a 3-bedroom, 1-bath. It's not even there anymore. It's now just an empty field. You can see the indentation on the curb where the walkway used to go through. That's all that's left of it. Otherwise, it's just grass. So this is where I was trained. It was during my first week of training. I didn't know anything about sleep. I had an awesome lady there. Her name is Brenda Hawking. She pretty much taught me everything I know from the start. She really got me up to speed quickly. I felt really competent and confident after she showed me the ropes. Fantastic. She's actually still working in the sleep field, more in sales for a different company, but love her to death. Sorry, I'm throwing out random facts. So this was a training night. So there were, I think, 2 other people. One of those people was someone, who'd been in the field for a while. His name was Bob, and then another guy, his name was Scott. So there were 4 of us there. 2 people as trainees and 2 people there who knew what they were doing. We were just kind of, observing. This one patient at the end of the hall, which doesn't matter to the story at all, was a woman. She was about in her 40s. Nothing special about her, and just a real nice lady. At one point during the night, she's laying down, and we have these cameras on. They're low-light cameras, but everything kind of glows. There's like a glow about them. Kind of just imagine a security camera, but skin glows a little more. So she's laying there. She goes into delta sleep, or slow-wave sleep. And all of a sudden, I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but this football-shaped light starts kind of orbiting around her. Mostly the upper body, but it's going around her head. It's kind of coming down around the arms, around the body, just circling slowly. I don't recall who noticed it first, but we went into the room to see what was going on. Patient is completely just not moving, nothing at all, still in delta sleep. I remember Bob going in the room first. He was pretty tall and lanky like myself, and he's just standing in the middle of the room, and he starts putting his arms out, trying to feel if he can feel any cold air or anything weird. He doesn't feel anything. Now, we can see the doors open. I can look down the hall and I can look on the monitor and still see this. As he puts out his arms, this little orb thing comes around, starts going around his body. So you can kind of get a feel for how big this is. And it was about football sized, but instead of the football coming to a point, it was a little more rounded off. And this thing is going around his body, and it starts going really fast. It goes around his head, around his arms as they're outstretched. And I'm just like, oh my God, we're kind of creating a bit of a racket now. So I go in to tell him, I go into the room, patient's right there. I'm like, Bob, this thing is going around you like crazy. And he's like, oh, really? I gotta go see this. So I'm standing in there and I'm putting my arms out, and I can't feel anything either. But when I go back out, they say, oh, it was whipping around you, it was whipping around your body, it was going around your arms, your head. Most incredible thing I've ever seen. So, eventually we shut the door. The orb is still there, and then it just eventually fades away and is gone. Now in the morning we mentioned this to the lady. We said, man, you had this thing that was, floating around, and it was the most incredible thing we've ever seen. And we weren't recording video. Unfortunately, video was not recorded at this time. But she did make mention that she was like, I wonder if that was my grandfather who just recently passed away. She seemed to think it was her grandfather visiting her. I have no idea what it was, but I know it was a light. We all saw it, and it was like extremely unexplained. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think this was, or if you think this was like a group hallucination. All right, here's an actual ghost story, in my opinion. Okay, this is also in Utah, Salt Lake City. I mentioned started at LDS Hospital, was transferred down to Cottonwood Hospital where I worked, but they wanted us to get some cross training in. So they sent us for a month at the other locations where they had labs, and that happened to be St. Joseph's Villa. St. Joseph's Villa was actually a really nice place, really nice equipment. The house that I had worked in at Cottonwood, it was actually pretty rundown equipment, but they had brand new stuff. They had 4 rooms, state-of-the-art equipment. So the way that this place was designed, it was a cardiac facility during the day, but at night it was a sleep lab. And they had 5 rooms when you enter this area on the right-hand side. The first room was the tech area. It's where the techs hang out. It's where you have your computers, where you monitor all the patients. Second room was room 1 for the patient room. Next one, room 2. Next one, room 3. Next one, room 4. Between room 3 and 4 down this long hall was our cabinet. That's where we had all of our supplies. Patients wanted an extra blanket because they were cold. Go ahead and grab them a blanket out of there. If you needed new supplies like paste, tape, whatever, it's all in there. So you have to walk down there pretty frequently during the night because that's kind of where you keep your carts when you're hooking patients up. Well, this one night I'm working with this guy named Craig. Inside the tech area, there's 4 computers lined up. These 4 computers are, if you were to look through the wall, you would see room 1, 2, 3, 4. They're lined up right there. 4 computers. Behind there, if I were to turn around, is another computer. It's more for personal use. The fridge was back there. And what we would do is we'd usually take turns. One person would watch the patients, and the other person would go and pretty much screw around on the computer. So at one point, Craig was there screwing around the computer. He didn't know. I had left the room. I got up and I walked out of there, and I was doing something with one of the patients. Some electrodes had fallen off. I was repairing them. As I came back in, he said, "How'd you do that?" I'm like, "How'd I do what?" He goes, "How did you do that? You poked me on the back, but you got out of the room before I could turn around." I said, "I didn't poke you on the back." And he's like, "Really?" He goes, "I felt you do it once." And I said, "Stop it." But then you did it again. And I turned around as quick as I could, and no one was there. I said, "Yeah, no one was there because I wasn't in there." So I was here at this lab for 4 weeks. That was week 1. The next week, when I was sitting there at the bank of computers, I would always see these black masses go by, always from left to right, never from right to left, always left to right. You'd catch this darkness just darting by really quickly. Super unnerving. At one point during that night, I was back at the other computer and I was talking to another tech. Her name was Lane. Lane was super nice. When you start working with people for the first time, you talk, chat, try to get to know them. Well, she was sitting at the bank of computers, so I can see all the monitors right here above her head. They're all right here. I'm facing them. She's facing me. I'm sitting back at that computer where we're screwing around. As I'm talking to her in room 3, I see this black mass go from left to right. It fully obscures the camera view, and then as it goes by, when it comes back, the camera view is swaying back and forth, and then it just slows down and stops. As I'm saying this, I said, "Oh my gosh, Lane!" It did that cycle pretty fast. It was like swipe by, like that. As I'm saying, "Oh my gosh, Lane!" Something just went in front of that camera. She turns around, it had stopped already. I was like, I tell her exactly what happened. I saw this black mass go by, the camera moved, and like, what the heck was that? She's like, "Oh, I've never seen that before." So she's now looking up at it, watching it like a hawk. Just watching. Finally turns around. I was like, "You know what? I guess it's not going to do it anymore." So she turns around and faces me. The second she turns around, black mass goes by, camera sway, and I said, "There it is, Lane. It's doing it again. It's doing it again." As soon as she turns around, it's like sway, stop. It stopped doing it right when she turned around. I'm just like, what the heck? I tell her again. I'm like, you turned around. The second you turned around, the thing stopped. I swear it did it. I swear. So she's sitting there watching it again. This time it's probably been like 4 or 5 minutes. And I'm like, Lane, it did it again. It's the camera's moving. It's crazy. So I say, you know what? Again, I guess it's not going to do it. The second she turns around to face me, it does it again. And I just point and look. I look at it and point. She turns around and sees it too and goes, oh my God. She freaks out. She's one of those that freaks out. She was freaking out. So I go into room 3 to see what's in there. One, the room is ice cold. I mean, it is freezing in there. I look up and I try to inspect the camera by jiggling it. That camera does not move. When I was actually trying to move it, Lane, when I went back and talked to her in the room, she said, no, the camera wasn't moving. I mean, maybe like a little bit of jiggle, but that thing was pretty fixed. It wasn't moving at all. But I really could not explain why it was so ice cold in there. I couldn't explain what moved from left to right in front of the camera and what made the camera appear to sway back and forth. A couple nights later, I'm in the same lab, St. Joseph's Villa, Salt Lake City. I'm walking out. I had to get some more supplies. I think a patient, I remember they asked for a blanket. As I'm walking by room 3, I feel like I walked through, like I just walked into the Arctic Circle. It just got freezing. I mean, like, cold. All the hairs, like I just got it right now. All the hairs on the back of my neck and my arms just stood up. And it wasn't because I was cold. It was like, I had this feeling like someone hated me. Like just burning hatred towards me. Like they wanted me to leave. They wanted me out of there now. And I was just like, wow, my back of my neck was just standing up. I grabbed some blankets. And I'm just trying to get the hell out of there as quick as I can. As soon as I get around there, into the tech area, that feeling just goes away of someone hating me. And I couldn't really quite explain it. But when I mentioned it to the main person, like the lab coordinator, the supervisor of all the labs, her name was Jennifer Millett. And she said, oh yeah, St. Joseph's? Yeah, there's a lot of stories from there. And then she goes on and she tells me a bunch of things that have happened to other techs at that same place. So it wasn't just me. It had apparently happened to a lot of people. Every time I was there at St. Joseph's Villa and I walked by that room 3, room 4 area, oh my God, it just scared the hell out of me. You just had this feeling that like you were being watched. It was perfectly lit up. It wasn't dark or anything. There was nothing scary about the area. It was like a nice hall in a hospital. It wasn't even a hospital. Like it was actually like a nice doctor's office. But to walk through it, man, you felt that the feeling you got was just absolute terror. It was so bizarre. What do you guys think of the paranormal? Does this scare you to go into a sleep lab and have a sleep study? I'm really interested in hearing what all you night shift people have to say. Hospitals tend to be a little spooky at night. Has anything happened? And what do you think of these stories? And did this keep you up at night? Do you have insomnia now? I'd love to hear your stories in the comment section down below. You know what's really scary? People not using my Amazon affiliate link. So check out that in the description box down below. In fact, check out all my links in the description box down below. I appreciate you watching, and if I feel better, maybe I'll record that other video. But
Thank you to all watching, but an extra thick thanks, buddy, to Veronica Young, Sarvesh Joshi, Stuart Hetherington, and Mona Swearingen. And thank you to my other level Patreon supporters as well as my YouTube members.